What's up everyone, Alex here. And yes, the hat's back by popular demand. Listen, I'm not prone to hyperbole, okay? But when I played through the Granblue Fantasy Relink demo and played through all 11 of the game's playable characters, which is, by the way, one of the reasons why this video is releasing later, much like the hype that I felt playing my Game of the Year last year, this game started giving me the feeling that this could be a potential contender for this year's Game of the Year. But you're here to watch my thoughts on the recently released demo, as well as get some info on things that the demo actually doesn't cover. And before you ask, no, there won't be any spoilers here, so I'm not going to talk about the story. But in case you're curious, you don't need to know the ongoing story or be a current fan of Granblue Fantasy in order to enjoy Relink. If there's a specific question you'd like answered, I've most likely made a chapter out of it, so feel free to bounce around. The very first question you might be asking is, can you play the game offline? And the answer is a resounding yes. The developers even said that you can take on the game solo, with or without AI characters, or up to a max of 4 players in online mode in quest mode only. To put it in another way, only quest mode has online co-op, and there is no local split screen option. Additionally, only the PlayStation platforms have crossplay. Sorry PC gamers. The demo includes 3 modes: tutorial, story, and quest. The tutorial mode is your standard fare, which teaches you the fundamental building blocks of the game. Someone in the community tab comments asked me if Granblue Fantasy Relink reminded me of Xenoblade Chronicles. I'm guessing they mean in terms of combat, and from that perspective, Relink is more of a real-time action game than the hybrid system that Xenoblade Chronicles has. You have a primary attack, a secondary button that changes depending on the character, a dedicated link attack button, and jump. For the shoulders and triggers, you have a lock-on toggle, skills, guard, and a dodge roll. Curiously, this tutorial doesn't talk about last-minute dodge rolling, which actually grants you some temporary invincibility when timed accordingly. The story mode in the demo puts you in the role of Gran, featuring a small spoiler-free chunk of the story that you can complete in about 20 minutes to half an hour, depending on how meticulous you want to be in exploring your surroundings. The demo takes you to a decently sized map, complete with cutscenes to set the stage, and lots of different enemy encounters, treasure chests, and even secrets. And while you simply can't walk off a cliff, you can jump off of it, and you'll take some damage from the fall if you don't land on safe ground. There is no falling damage in Granblue Fantasy Relink, thankfully. When I got into my first real battle outside of the tutorial, I found Granblue Fantasy Relink to be quite responsive, and I was able to string a ton of fluid combos with Gran quite easily. The secondary button for Gran acts as a combo ender, which changes depending on how many times you press the attack button. And for button mashers, you'd be happy to know that guarding and dodging does cancel animations, so you won't be stuck in the middle of an attack a la Monster Hunter. There is a caveat to this, however, because if you dodge 3 times consecutively, you incur a recovery animation penalty that you cannot cancel, leaving you vulnerable to attack. Alternatively, guarding too many attacks will leave you open to an attack once it eventually breaks. All that said, I was able to play around with smacking an opponent once, dodging, smacking them again, dodging, etc., just to test how flexible this system is, and the game allowed me to do just that. The game also features skills, which you can freely change, link attacks, which become available whenever an enemy gets stunned, and a skybound art, abbreviated as SBA by the game, which is basically a super move, complete with a super meter, found below your character's health bar. There's also some fun complications involving link attacks and skybound arts that can be fun to coordinate when you're playing with a party filled with online players. For example, a link meter starts filling up every time someone activates link attacks or some other cool stuff, and when that meter reaches 100%, time slows down around you for a brief moment. Skybound arts, on the other hand, can be stocked and activated one after the other, and if all 4 party members chain their SBAs, this will trigger a full chain burst, which is a super devastating attack that is well worth coordinating for. Thankfully, the AI party members are quite capable of coordinating these attacks, which is quite refreshing, given that AI in other action games tend to let you do a lot of the work. Skills, on the other hand, aren't just limited to attacks. Some characters have healing and buff skills that can be targeted by holding down the corresponding button, adding utility options for what can sometimes be a fast and frenetic action game. In the full game, you can learn new skills by unlocking mastery nodes, which also raises stats. There's also items you can use by holding down a D-pad direction, which contains curatives and revives should you need it. These items can be replenished by touching green crystals scattered throughout the story mode areas. Someone in the comment section of my community tab asked me if Granblue Fantasy offered additional customization options that wasn't in the demo. And apart from the skill mastery nodes and leveling up your weapons and sigils in the full game, it might seem that that's all there is to it. But when you consider both its customization and its gameplay systems, Granblue Fantasy Relink actually has a lot in common with Monster Hunter than you might think. Monster Hunter games tend to have an accessible yet deep gameplay depth that ties all of its different gameplay systems together, which revolves around needing to craft and continuously upgrade new weapons and armor, and equipping the right gear when taking on specific monsters. But having the right gear isn't enough, as the aforementioned series combat also serves to add to its gameplay depth, asking you to read how monsters behave so you can properly pile on the offense based on your weapon of choice. While the demo doesn't really touch upon how its customization interacts with its combat, Granblue Fantasy Relink's bosses definitely ask you to be familiar with their movesets, as they have attacks that'll fling you far away if you're just mashing buttons. The game's bosses telegraph their moves by either flashing or putting attack markers on the ground, which helps make a lot of sense of what's happening amidst the chaos. And unlike other action games that love obscuring the action with sparkly visual effects, I found Relink's tells to be a bit more comprehensible, which helped me figure out what I should do during critical moments. And much like Monster Hunter, it looks like there will still be a grind for gear, albeit simplified in some manner. Every weapon and sigil in the demo have levels that can be powered up at a blacksmith in the full game. And while we're not privy to the exact details as to how this works, the devs have been quoted in saying that it's a comparatively more simplified upgrade system when compared to the Monster Hunter games. And if you're planning to take on a full party into combat, you'll probably have to consider their innate elements, as I see that being one of the bigger considerations when tackling harder content. Overall, the mix of vast explorable sections, complete with fun enemy encounters and bosses, really sold the idea of its story mode to me. I can tell that the developers spent a lot of polish and time to make sure that this mode shines. I explored and discovered every hidden nook and cranny of this demo area, and I'm eager to explore more locations in the full game. The devs said that story mode will take between 20 to 25 hours to complete, which doesn't include the many side quests you'll encounter along the way. The post-game will have over 100 quests and hours of post-game content, which will be organized by their difficulty. Granblue Fantasy Relink won't have selectable difficulty settings, but that doesn't mean that the game will be easy either. Story mode is also where you'll get to unlock characters to play as in the full game. Characters aren't unlocked by reaching certain story beats. Instead, you'll receive a special item which will allow you to unlock any character of your choosing from a roster. This means that you can unlock characters in however order you want. You just need to obtain that special item by progressing the story. Eventually, you'll finish the story mode demo, and you'll probably have enjoyed your time so much that you'll want to play more. So, it's off to the quest mode you go. The demo offers 3 quests, the first one being a wave-based skirmish, with the other 2 squaring you off against a powerful beast. What's good about quest mode is that if you complete a quest while playing with others online, everyone completes the quest provided that they have it unlocked. And to be clear, any player can help with any quest. They just won't get credit for completing it if they don't have it unlocked. That being said, everyone still gets to reap the quest's rewards. What's more is that when taking on a quest, you can turn on a feature called spoiler prevention in the full game. The description of it wasn't too clear, but I'd assume it'll prevent cutscenes from playing on players who have yet to activate the quest. Regardless of how it actually works, this ensures that players don't get spoiled with the story while they play with their friends, which is such a thoughtful feature to have. Each quest has a power level requirement, which is a combination of your character's level and equipment's levels. You can ignore the power level requirement, making the quest a formidable challenge. And as hinted at earlier, characters can also equip sigils that offer stat boosts, increased experience gain, and bolster resistances. I played all 11 playable characters in quest mode, and whenever you select a new character, Relink will give you a brief tutorial on how to play them. Interestingly, I found that the characters present in Granblue Fantasy vs Rising have a similar learning curve in Relink. For example, I picked up how to play Catalina and Charlotta really quickly, while Narmaya took a little bit to get used to due to her secondary button being a stance change rather than an additional attack, in addition to a unique gimmick involving butterflies. Needless to say, characters have different learning curves, and part of the fun is mastering their playstyle and giving them the proper equipment to make them more effective during combat. Given that I was playing the Japanese demo of the game, which featured both English text and voice acting, I was forced to pair up with players from Japan when I attempted to play the game online. Surprisingly, Relink's online netcode seems super solid, and I didn't notice any sort of rollback or hitching while playing the game, even on wireless. I know, right? Why would you ever play online games wirelessly? Kidding aside, I was super surprised to see how solid the connection was wirelessly and across thousands of miles, which actually made me dream of events where the Backlog battle community could party up across the miles to play a Relink quest or two. If you want this to happen, let me know in the comments below. For a good majority of the time, however, I played with my AI counterparts while equipping them with sigils, which definitely felt like it made a significant difference. When you complete a quest, you're graded depending on your performance, along with side goals to fulfill. The demo didn't really show you the kinds of rewards you'd get by completing the quests, so we'll just have to wait for the full game for that one. Given my knowledge of what Granblue Fantasy, the gacha MMO, is, and what I've played of the original Granblue Fantasy versus, I can see quest mode being the home of challenging raids and the like. In fact, the developers revealed that the first update will feature an incredibly difficult quest that's supposed to be one of the most challenging quests in the game, and quote, "He will take a lot of preparation to take down." Part of the appeal of the original Granblue Fantasy, after all, is its ability to make you feel continuously powerful as you take on more difficult raid bosses and upgrade your weapons, thus surviving its tougher battles. The post-game setup is being kept under wraps, so I'm hoping that however players upgrade their weapons in Relink continues in the post-game. Other features that you'll find in the demo that I didn't play around with include 2 degrees of assists, with one option simplifying combos to just one button, and another where your character will attack independently of you. I personally enjoy having full control over my character, so I didn't feel the need to try these options out. That said, I'm glad the option is there for any turn-based fans who are reluctant in trying out the action gameplay. I want to take the time to address a question from the community tab comments asking me what I think of the soundtrack. I normally don't go for sweeping and soaring orchestrations, but I find that Granblue Fantasy Relink gives off a good, setting off on an adventure vibe that I greatly appreciate, and the songs that play during boss battles heightens the stakes for these encounters that add to the suspense and thrill of battle. With regards to performance on my base PS4, I found that it was capped at 30 frames per second and was fairly stable, even with a lot of things going on. Surprisingly, the loading times didn't take long as well, which is great for getting you into the action quicker. The PS5 version has quicker loading times, of course, as well as crisper graphics running at 60 frames per second. Regardless, I think that whatever version you play, you'll have a good time playing Granblue Fantasy Relink, because at this point, it's up to your personal preference. As I'm writing this script, I find myself wanting to go back to play the demo for Granblue Fantasy Relink, not only to properly learn each character's playstyles, but to also get familiar with how the different sigils function. And what a difference a day makes. Because before I even played the demo, I said to myself that I was going to be cautiously optimistic for how the game would turn out. After all, this is the game that Platinum Games was kicked off of. But after playing the demo for close to 3 hours now, this cautious optimism turned into a very real excitement for the full game. And, in my opinion, a very, very real contender for this year's Game of the Year. With all that said, I want to hear what you think. Have you played the Granblue Fantasy Relink demo? What do you think of all the info here that wasn't accessible in the demo? Post your thoughts in the comments below and let's talk about it. Thank you very much for watching, everyone, and I'll see you in the next video.